I'm going to go ahead and click record so I can get every minute I can with you. And I'll have you out of here by 6:45.
Sounds good.
First of all, it's good to see you, brother. Been a while.
Good you too, man.
And that, for the folks that don't know, you just killed a non-typical freak of a whitetail. It was awesome buck. So
Yeah.
so congrats on that too.
Well, thank you.
But so I haven't told anybody this yet, so this is kind of the reveal, I guess, if you want to call it. I'm looking at trad bow hunting next year. Me and my buddy Brad Powell, he killed a big ass Rosie last year. I mean, I thought I killed the king of the mountain. Killed a 313 bull. It's a life goal of mine to kill one over 300 inches on the coast. And he came over to my house, and he's like, dude, I'll probably never kill one that big. And then goes out that same day, that evening, and kills a 325. So
good Lord.
It's like,
so
dude,
he gave you one day.
You just couldn't let me have it, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, I mean, I'm totally stoked for him. I'm happy, but him and I are both looking at the trad game next year, and I have a little bit of experience, and I know I could figure it out, but I'm like, I should probably pick Bryan's brain on this, make a podcast episode, and just make sure I don't have any stupid thoughts in my head before I started blowing money at trad crap.
You mean the stupid thought of going to a trad boat? That doesn't count.
So that's fair. So here's my thought, man, is like, I'm going to carry my compound. I'm going to be dialed with it. And if I have a freak bull just walks out like I did this year, I'm going to smoke it with my compound. I'm not playing games. But if I have, just a rag or a younger bull and that I'm going to pass up with my compound, I'm going to try and kill it with my trad bow. So,
well, I feel like the country that I've seen that you guys hunt out there, I mean, most of your shots are pretty close anyway, aren't they?
This year I shot that bull at 79.
Well, that's not close.
No, I mean, because there's a lot of units. There's a lot of units, and it's open. And then I followed it up with, I didn't redial or anything. I didn't range him, but I put my 79 on the back of his back, and it smoked him again. I mean, both my arrows were about that far apart, right behind the shoulder, just thunk, thunk, kind of like that, and just and there's not really anywhere to go but down from that bull. And I'm like, well, I think it would kind of be cool to just start fresh with the trad bow and just fall in love with bow hunting and getting close again. Because for me, I've killed a lot of stuff at longer distances, and I feel like that's robbing myself of the true experience of really bow hunting. I mean, I've got 2 kills under 20 yards. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And I've been bow hunting for, 16 years now, and I've got 2 kills under 20 yards. It just doesn't seem right to me, like.
No. And I mean, I don't ever want to throw out like numbers or anything, but you kind of know my resume.
Right.
And I would say 90% of mine have been under 20 yards, including Western game.
Yeah. And I would swap you my resume with your resume, but I am more proud of my 17-yard sub 20 kills than I am my longer distance kills. And I mean, I hardly ever talk about my longer distance ones because I'm like, dude, I filled my tag, I got it done. In my opinion, I was ethical. I made 1 shot. I didn't need 2 shots on that bull, but if I have a second shot, I'm going to take it. And
always.
And so, but I'm like, to really be better and push myself, I feel like this is just the next step. And I almost did it a few years ago, but I wasn't to the point where I wasn't willing to eat a tag, and I'm still not quite there yet. So I'm going to carry my compound with me, but I know I can kill him with a trad bow if I tried. I know I could.
Well, you can. I mean, what I would tell you is that, I had the few years of bouncing back and forth where I wasn't totally committed because I was still young. I mean, I started shooting a stick bow in, I guess I would have been 22 years old. So, and I wasn't ready to commit fully, so I was bouncing back and forth. And the guy that kind of got me into it, he just said, "Man, you could be an incredible, stick bow guy if you would just commit to it. Because everything you're killing with your compound, you're killing inside of 20 anyway. You're just afraid of that 30-yard shot that's going to walk by you." And so I guess I was probably 24, 25 when I committed fully. And I guess I probably went 15 years straight with just stick bow.
Hmm.
And I can honestly say that I could count on one hand the animals that got by, because they were out. I couldn't get within a close enough stick bow range. But it's not that I didn't kill another one. It's just that that handful of animals I couldn't close the deal on. So I didn't feel like it was that big of a handicap to me, and still don't. I mean, I would go back to it tomorrow. The only reason I don't shoot a stick bow right now is because I own day 6 gear, and that's it. I mean, and it's the honest truth. And 95% of our customers are compound shooters, and if I'm not up to date and dialed on what they're experiencing with the new equipment they're experiencing, I'm not doing them justice. So,
Yeah.
But if I didn't have this company, I'd still be shooting a stick bow, guaranteed.
That's interesting, because I feel like your arrows, having a little bit of an elevated GPI, you're kind of gearing yourself. Yeah, you have designed everything that you sell through your own personal success and everything. I mean, you just your success guides what you shoot, just like me. Like I fell in love with your broadhead, immediately, because I'm like, dude, this is, if I had to create a broadhead, it would be exactly like yours, pretty much. And you and I had that conversation years ago, and I feel like your arrows would be great for trad guys. I mean, they are great for trad guys. Like, I feel like that little bit heavier, the even from the broadhead to the arrow, everything for me points to a trad bow setup.
It does, because that's where basically my origin is. And so I'll tell you this: if you'll commit to a stick bow for a few years, and you decide to go back to a compound, the compound will feel like a cheater bar. I mean, it'll feel like a rifle, going from a bow to a rifle now. I mean, it's a laser beam compared to shooting a stick bow. And so, but what it did for me, is it truly taught me about tuning a bow and arrow flight. And it truly taught me about how important arrow flight is to penetration, because you don't have the luxury of the velocity calculation and your momentum. So you have to pare it down to mass and arrow flight. And once I understood that, and understood how critical it was, that arrow flight was everything, and the number 2 thing for me was resistance, having as little amount of resistance as possible upon impact, so you're not losing energy at impact. So once I understood that, and spent years and years trying to put that perfect package together to be a consistently successful trad bow guy. And that does include about 5 years of the high FOC BS, because that's where the origin of that started, was in the trad bow world.
Right.
And the single bevel shit and all that stuff. So, I spent a long time in that hole back in the early 90s, with a stick bow, trying to create any advantage I could, if you will. So, but once I understood it, and I saw what could be achieved from a penetration and a efficiency standpoint with a stick bow, when I decided to build products primarily for compound shooters, and if I decided to ever go back to a compound, I would, my theory is why would I scrap the arrow broadhead system that's working with a toy compared to a laser? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like a slingshot to a laser type thing. And so why not just take that projectile and put it in a very efficient energy machine and just blow through everything you shoot? And that's how my compound that's how my compound theories basically were formed. Was the genesis was the trad bow experience, if
So
that makes sense.
it does make sense, and I'm trying to figure out a way to build an arrow. I guess with your arrow setups, I'm at 480 grains, and I thought
Yeah,
about dropping down to a 100 grain head this year because I'm just like, I'm blowing through everything I'm shooting, man. It doesn't matter if 62-yard frontal. We're talking elk only. 62-yard frontal, I'm losing arrows. I'm going blowing right through them. I mean, it doesn't
yeah,
matter. I went through the offside scapula on that bull at 80, I don't know, 7 yards this year. I'm like, that was the first time in a while I'd retrieved, an arrow.
yeah,
The first shot was laying in the road, I guess, but it just is like I'm leaving. I feel like I've got more than enough energy to penetrate past what I want to shoot at. I'm cutting myself off at 80 with my compound, which is a long ways. And I'm like, maybe I can go lighter and gain back some speed. And I'm like, why, if it's not broken, why screw with it? When you and I first started talking, I was like, if it's not broken, I'm still going to screw with it. And now I'm like coming
yep.
full circle. I'm like, I'm not going to freaking screw with it. But with a
Well, you're getting older and wiser through experience.
I am. I'm losing my hair too. Yeah.
Hey, it's turning loose instead of turning gray, right?
There you go.
Well, the thing is that one thing that I do want to say, I don't want to make it sound, I'm a very like straightforward, honest type of guy, and I'm the worst salesman ever when it comes to our products. It's not that we're selling a magic bean by any means. A big part of your success that you're achieving is your commitment to getting a perfect tune, and getting perfect arrow flight and executing a perfect shot in the moment and not torquing the crap out of your bow and sending a wobbling arrow downrange.
Right.
So, I want to give credit where credit is due. It's not that we're selling some magic bean that's making you this just, incredibly lethal hunter. It's the combination of that and you getting perfect arrow flight, even in the moment, because most people can get it on the range, but they end up, stepping on their pecker a bit, if they're standing on the side of a mountain, shooting it at elk. So,
I've got buddies like that.
Huh?
I said, I've got buddies like that. I actually converted a buddy of mine, James. He shoulder shot a small bull at 40 something, 50 yards. And he was using a head. I'm like, dude, if you would have been using, I'm like, I don't want to be that guy, but if you were using my setup, you would have killed it. But I'm like, if you were using my setup, I honestly believe we wouldn't be tracking this bull right now. We'd be packing it out. And so I'm like, here, let me. In the middle of the day, we weren't on elk, and I'm like, let's set up this target, and let's just see, what your bow does. If it's tuned, if it likes the arrow and it's tuned, and it likes the head. I'm like, let's just see what it does. And he's just laser beaming right out to 25 yards. I'm like, sweet. And then I ended up giving him, I think, a head, and he put it on his arrow, and ended up smoking a 5-point with it a week later or something like that. And he's like, dude, I never heard it hit. I'm like, isn't that kind of funny how you don't hear sharp things hit? I'm like, I hardly ever hear my broadheads hit anymore. I heard that one hit on the second shot because it hit that offside scapula, but half the time I don't even know if I hit the animal because it's just sometimes they don't even react. They just stand there looking around like, what the hell just happened? You don't hear the animal or you don't hear it hit because it's so freaking sharp that there's just no friction there. It's just right through it.
No resistance.
Yeah.
No
and
resistance.
So I converted him. I converted him and another buddy when we went and killed or when we went and packed out my bull. They saw the devastation that the heads did, and I'm like, there's a reason I shoot these. I've shot probably over 150 heads on the market, man. I've tested over 100 easily. There's a reason I shoot Bryan's heads, and I converted a couple guys last year, but it's like, there's a lot of stuff on the market that you can kill stuff with. Putting something in the lungs goes a long ways, but there's a difference there because he hit the weak part of the scapula on a 3-blade, and lost a bull like at 50 yards, and it's just like, dude, I would have blown right through that. And I'm not shooting anything. I'm a small guy. I'm 28-inch draw, 70 pounds, shooting probably 262.
Yeah.
I'm shooting. Probably 262, 265, somewhere in there, feet per second.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a bunch of speed if your shit's tuned.
Yeah, well, Yeah, for sure. Well, the thing is I know you want to talk about how to get into
Yeah, we're getting off
be a successful stick bow shooter without you know without tripping over yourself on the way. So here's some here's let's talk about the bow first.
That's
Okay.
where I was going to start.
Okay, good. So there's a lot of pretty bows out there, and um, and that's kind of where it ends. Um, it doesn't really matter how pretty the bow is. It doesn't matter what it's made from. If it's not cut a minimum of 3/16 past center, the riser, it's not worth shooting. If you want to be a very proficient trad bow guy that gets optimum penetration on big game animals.
Break that down for me. 3/16 past center. Explain that to me.
So most bows that you see made, most of them that were made before 2000, 2000, even as late as 2005 or 10, they would cut the basically where your shelf is and the side of your riser.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those were cut to center or maybe just a 16th past center, which meant that your arrow, for a right-handed shooter, your arrow is already pointing out to the left.
Okay.
You follow me?
Yep.
And they did that because they're making it out of wood and stuff, and they're afraid to remove too much material, to weaken the riser, and the riser would break. So just a quick little spin around. Like the FOC thing started when Dr. Ashby was in Africa shooting all these animals, and then he was shooting all these whatever carcasses and stuff. And he started adding point weight, and he started getting better penetration. Well, he was adding point weight to like an 80-pound self bow that wasn't even cut probably to center shot, but maybe to center. And with a stick bow, when you have a bow that's not cut to center shot, the more weight you add, the more the arrow flexes. And you're basically adding the weight until you get that timing to where it's flexing around that riser, because the riser's not simple stuff.
Yep.
But it only took everybody, 50 years to figure it out. But that is why he got better penetrations, because he got better arrow flight by creating, the higher point weight was flexing the dynamic spine of the arrow, and he was getting better arrow flight. Arrow flight is why you get better penetration. All that other crap is just smoke and mirrors that sell stuff. So anyway, picking out a bow, you've got to make sure that bow is a modern compound that's cut at least 3/16 past center. So even if it's more, it's better, because then you've got like moleskin on the side or some type of calf hair for it to be quiet. That's a 1/16 of an inch or more thick. So what you're trying to do is make sure that arrow does not have to shoot around the riser. I'm making this very simple. I'm not using technical stuff, but try to make it easy for people to understand.
Copy.
So that's super important. And a lot of people don't have bows that are done that way, and they struggle. And so I have guys call me all the time. Yeah, I'm shooting a 50-pound recurve at 28 inches, and the only thing I can get the flat of it's a 500 spine. I'm like, yeah, it's because your bow's not cut past center, and so you're having to bend the arrow around the riser. If that's the case, then you're going to just fight that thing constantly. You're never going to get perfect arrow flight. And it's going to be very unforgiving when you put a big old crank and broadhead on the front of it. So it's just going to magnify all the problems that you've got, because you're having to flex that arrow, get it to turn. Then you've got a broadhead on the front trying to steer it. So what you're trying to do is the same thing you're trying to do with your compound, is have center shot perfect and have that arrow go out with as little manipulation and little contact as possible. That's how you kill big stuff with stick bows. That's really everything in a nutshell, because it opens up all your options to get the proper arrow, the proper weight, and you're not restricted down to these smaller spines because of because of it's not cutting past center shot.
So you started with, basically a bow's a bow. There's pretty ones, and then you went into the center shot. I
That's what
want
I'm saying. It doesn't matter how pretty they are, what they're made out of. If
right.
they're not cut past center, they're not worth having to me.
I wanna go, and this is just a complete genuine conversation for folks that are listening here, because these are things that I've been rolling around in my head, so you can hear how I think. But I've heard that wood bows kind of have a memory as far as where they want to bend, and like my buddy started trad bow hunting a few years ago, and he was having problems with his bow just not tuning, not shooting, and it was a wood bow, and it was like, well, trees are round, they're naturally bending in a circle, and this bow is trying to go. Somebody told him the bow is trying to go back to the way that it started. I don't know if that ever. I'm worried about wood bows because of that. I was leaning towards synthetic. Is that a legit problem? Is that something that you've even heard
No,
of?
no. If it's a laminated bow, no,
Okay.
because you got to realize like the wood portion of the limbs they're trying to twist on you. For the most part, most of the modern laminated bows, they're a small percentage of the laminate schedule or the buildup of the limb. So if you can picture like a popsicle stick, like that thin,
Mm-hmm.
just imagine like um, 6 pieces or 8 pieces of material, the thickness of a popsicle stick, mostly sometimes thinner. I'm just trying to get a visual. Or say a yardstick, like a measuring stick.
Mm-hmm.
If you had 6 or 8 of those and you stack them, clamp them, glue them, that's how you build a limb up, and you build it into the shape, and then it takes that shape. Well, 2 of those 6 laminates may be wood. The rest of them are glass or carbon or whatever, some type of synthetic.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
So if I'm
yeah.
working, if I'm hunting on the coast, moisture isn't going to be an issue with me. If I buy a wood bow, I wouldn't have to worry about all
If,
that
if
shit.
the bow is built properly and sealed properly, no.
How big of a if is that?
Well,
So
so you're dragging me into the weeds on
I'm
this.
sorry.
But I guess everybody likes technical crap and data and charts and flow sheets and
Well,
shit.
I
So
was
I
looking
guess
at like South Cox. I know him. I want to support good people. I like South Cox. I was thinking about going with one of his bows or the Bob Lee bows that Jake Downs shoot. And I've heard you. I think you've had good success. Or I forget which one you were really excited about that you helped design.
that. Well, I went to Bob Lee Bowes 2 summers ago and went over there, made 4 trips over, 4 3-day trips, and basically helped them design and develop their Cobra Curve limbs, their
Mm-hmm.
carbon fiber limbs. Um, they had never had success, building carbon fiber limbs and high performance limbs, and so through Jake, they reached out to me, and well, basically Jake said, "Dude, I want my bows to shoot like your bows, but I want to support Bob Lee because they're good people. Would you be willing to go over there and help Rob do this?" And I said, yeah, for sure. And so that's what we did. And it's a great performing bow. I mean, it's like I've only shot 3. At one time, I owned over 200 traditional bows.
Jesus.
I had a sickness, but I'd been collecting them for years. I just
Yeah.
never sold any. And then I was having them made by every other person thinking, okay, this is going to be the next Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've shot three bows from 3 manufacturers in the 30 years of screwing around with these things that I feel are noticeably different and set themselves apart from the rest of the crowd. So you take those 3 bows and move them out in their own category, and then every other modern recurve, modern longbow out there, to me, there's not 2% difference. So
Okay.
there's literally not. I could blindfold you and you could shoot 20 of them from different Boyers, and you wouldn't be able to feel a noticeable difference.
Well, I remember you talking about that conversation about the Bob Lee bows, and I just really really want to start off with a good bow and not have to buy and upgrade later. Like if I'm gonna trad hunt, I want to get a really good bow, and so I was kind of leaning
Yeah.
towards the one that you helped design because I'm like, well, if Bryan did it, it's probably done right, Like I just
Well,
really
I
want
didn't.
to,
Yeah.
or if you helped with it or had a hand in it, it's not
Yeah.
going to be a pile of shit. So, um,
No, and what I would say is that, and listen, I love those guys down there, and I'm always a very black and white guy. Um, like their bows that are like their bows before the Shikara that they make now and the Cobra Curve stuff, they fall into that category of there's not a 2% difference between everything else.
okay,
Um, I'm just being honest. And when it comes to traditional bows, like you said, like I like South, I want to support what he does. Um, for the most part, most people buy their traditional bows based on who they like and how that company represents itself and how it represents hunting, that kind of thing. That's probably what led me to owning so many damn bows at one point in my life. Is I just like talking to the people and like their story. And I've had a lot of obscure bows and just really been through it all. But if there's a guy in Florida, um, very obscure, very few people know about him. His name is Steve Jewett. He makes a Bushman. To me, uh, his recurves are, I mean, to me, those are the holy grail of bows. From his connection system to how they perform, everything about them. It's just, and I did work closely with him um, to design his Spartan series years ago. He actually made me commit to buy 10 bows to like begin the project and actually engage in it. He's like, I don't want to do this and then nobody buy them. And I said, well, how many would I have to buy for you to do it? He said 10. I said, done. Let's do it. Here's what we want. Yeah. So this was a long time ago. This is probably 15 years ago, maybe. No, maybe not that long. Maybe 10 or 12 years ago.
And he's still in the game doing it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But he probably only builds, I bet he only builds 50 bows a year, but they're masterpieces from the aesthetic all the way to how they shoot.
Okay.
And then the Bob Lee Shikara, if you like a real heavy bow, that is like high performance, like heavier mass. It's got a G10 riser. It's but the limb performance is phenomenal. So I remember when we finally, I think the first bow Robin I built came out at like 82 pounds. Like, crap, that ain't gonna work.
Holy
so smokes. Yeah, well, when you're coming up with new laminate schedules, you got to basically get a starting point and go, okay, well, we built it with this many thousandths and all these laminates. Here's what came out 82. Now we can do the math to get it down to normal human weight. So the second one he built he was trying to hit 55. No, yeah, 54, 55, because that's what he shot, 54, 55 at 28. And so the second one we did, it came out at 47. And so I think his hunting bow was 54. And he goes, okay, so we're going to test this thing. So I said, listen, take the same arrow that you're shooting out of your 54-pound bow and use your 54-pound bow as a baseline. And then shoot that same arrow out of the 47, then we're going to know what the delta is as far as performance increase. So he said, well, it's not apples to apples because it's not the same weight. I said, well, I understand, but you're still going to be able to see, what you're going to be able to identify is what poundage swing that we've created. Like how much more efficient is this bow 7 pounds lighter than the 54-pound bow? And he goes, okay. So he went to his buddy's place and shot it through chronograph and shot it through a hooter shooter too. And I believe, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I know that the 47-pound bow with the same arrow was faster than the 54 by 1 or 2 feet per second.
That's incredible.
It was incredible. So basically we created a 7-pound swing.
Yeah, that's huge.
So everybody's, they're like, well, we can just shoot a lighter bow. I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. Shoot your same weight that you're comfortable with, but now shoot a heavier arrow. Now you've you've increased velocity and you're able to increase mass. You're getting yourself closer into that more efficient energy source range, because it bows your engine. So, so anyway, I know that was the kind of the swing on those bows, which was incredibly impressive to me. The bow is real heavy. It's a bulky 3-piece design with a bulky riser, and like Jake loves it. Jake loves a super, super heavy bow. I don't. I want the bow, once I put the quiver and the arrows and everything on, to be a certain weight. And once you do that with a heavier bow, they get too heavy for me. And then the third bow that I've shot that is equally as impressive is Trent Wingard's bows out of Montana. He has done his own due diligence and his own design and figured out the carbon limb laminate system that works. And his bows are really nice as well, works of art as well. And I honestly feel like, from a recurve standpoint, those three are I just feel like they're in another league. And then everything else is kind of just like tied for second. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to get into different types of strings and not get too in depth to it. The types of strings really matter in your opinion?
No.
Okay.
No.
We'll just move on then.
Whatever the Boyer has recommended to be the best string for their bow, they've gone through it and played with it. Mm-hmm. Don't screw with it. Now, okay. I will say that all my bows have mountain muffler strings on them, because he weaves in the fluffy stuff. I can't remember what you call it. Yeah, some kind, the string silencer material, but he uses like some type of faux fur.
Huh.
But he weaves that into the string when he makes it. So most strings, sorry, I got to plug my phone in here. Bear with me 1 second.
It's all good.
Yeah. So most strings that have, silencers or whatever on them, those strings, the silencers are, far enough down to where they don't come in contact with the limb. But with a recurve, for me, having some type of silencing material in contact with the curve of the limb is super critical, because what it does is it eliminates that slap, and it stops the vibration of the string twice as fast. Now, you're going to lose a foot per second. Well, you're already shooting a slow boat to China, so who cares?
Yeah.
So for me, like string wise, and I'm sure that there are other companies that make stuff like that. I just know that the mountain muffler strings is what I've been used to. They, and they'll make it out of whatever you want, and then they put that material woven in, and they've just been great for me. And you tie your nocks on. You use a tied knock, not a pinch knock, and that way you can twist it and run it up and down your serving to easily adjust your knock point.
Okay, and yep. I'm really liking the idea of a clicker, just because I am always trying to find consistency wherever I can. What's your opinion on clickers, especially for a new guy like me? I feel like it would be really valuable. I picture it being like I'm in the moment and I'm adrenaline's pumping and I draw back farther than normal. And I just want that clicker to keep me grounded and consistent. For me, it's a great training tool. They've been around forever. And a lot of guys have used them, and then they use them in the field. You've had I don't know if we'll call it a benefit, but you've had the experience of hunting my crackheads in Alabama. Yes.
And if you have a clicker on your bow, you're not going to kill an Alabama whitetail with a stick bow.
I could see that.
And a really famous person that had a short stint, in the trad bow world, learned that the hard way, and he was stuffing shit up in the clicker to try to quiet it down. And
wow,
still so he finally had to rip it off, because it's not going to help you any. with like an elk, it's not going to be a problem. I don't think.
I don't think so either.
No,
because
but
I use a
here's
hinge
one
with a
thing I'll
clicker
tell
already.
you. Yeah, and so here's one thing I'll tell you is that you'll experience if you'll truly commit to shooting one of these is you're going to kill a lot of stuff on the second arrow, on a follow-up arrow.
Really?
So you're going to basically fire a lot of warning shots, but the bows are so quiet that the animals just don't react, and you're going to load another arrow and you're going to kill an animal on the second shot. I have killed hundreds of animals with a stick bow after firing a warning shot. And every time I tell the story, people are like, that's so stupid. I don't know why you hunt with that thing. You should just hunt in the compound. The stuff's hard enough. And I'm like, well, I always want to be, fair and ethical and give everything a sporting chance. So if you fire a warning shot, now everybody knows that you're, at war. So, but get ready for it because it's going to happen. And it happens a lot. I mean, I would say, I was trying to remember this other day. I think I killed 9 or 10 elk with a stick bow. And I know that at least 4 of them I missed low. Because elk are so big and I'm not a rangefinder guy. I've never used them. And I'm always judging yardage with a stick bow. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's 25 yards and he's 35,
Right.
And you shoot under him, and they've just stood there. And so that's a very high percentage, so let's say 40% of the elk I've killed with a stick bow has been on a second shot.
Yeah.
Because I've wigged out and missed or whatever. But, so you're a really good shot. You have good hand-eye coordination. And most guys that shoot stick bows, Jake Downs will tell you the same thing. Very rarely will you miss left or right.
That's me. Yep.
Never left or right. It's with a stick bow, it's going to be high and low.
Okay.
And that's kind of the trick to it all for me is like when we were developing these bows over the last 10 or 12 years with different guys, what I was trying to achieve is the ability to shoot the mass arrow I want to shoot, but shorten that max point blank range. So I want to reduce my high and low. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if my bow with a 600 grain arrow is dropping, from max point blank range down to 30, if it's dropping 14 inches, man, if I could get that to 8, with a more efficient tool to send the arrow down range, that's what I'm always hunting. That's what I was always striving for, was just shorten that high and low gap. Because that's the only way you're going to miss, really, if you're a proficient shooter, is left and right.
That makes total sense to me. And I guess for trad bows, I've heard all sorts of shit with trad bow arrow setups, but I'm thinking somewhere between I want to be around a 525, 550. Is that good, bad? Because I feel like that's plenty. Yeah. So for me, here's where it lies. Like, I would never shoot anything under 550, only because I've just done it a long time and I know what it takes to be consistently proficient with a stick bow. And mass is a big part of it, for 2 reasons. Number 1, mass, but number 2, more stable arrow flight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a more forgiving arrow, and it's going to be easier to get good, stable flight, consistent flight with a heavier arrow.
So you wouldn't be afraid to go 600 then? It sounds like you shoot 600 currently.
So I think Jake and I's arrows are exactly the same. I think they're identical, and I think both of our arrows are 590.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And I've shot a arrow within 25 grains for that for 20 something years. So out of a stick bow. But I would not be afraid to shoot a 550 grain arrow if it was just flying perfect. I'm trying to do an abridged version of this. Even though stick bows are very simple, they're extremely hard to tune and stay tuned. Yeah. So, but one of the things that I do that and some of the guys that I know that are very, very, very lethal guys with a stick bow, is when I'm practicing shooting or shooting a 3D course, just target shooting, I only shoot bare shafts. Period. Fletching is never, a fletched arrow is never in my quiver unless there's a broadhead on the front of it. Because that bare shaft with a stick bow tells no lies. And so when you're dicking up and not doing it right, or short drawing, or torquing the string, getting your face in it, or whatever, that bare shaft is going to tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. And if the bow's out of tune, it's going to tell you what it's doing wrong. And so I'm sure your question is, I know your mind, how does a stick bow get out of tune? It's really pretty simple. It's the brace height. The string stretches.
That's what I've heard.
And the brace height changes.
Add and twist into your string, and then I've heard that only because my buddy 3 or 4 years ago was just fighting his trad bow, man, and he went way down the rabbit hole, and I heard him just complaining about brace height and adding twists, and then just all sorts. I'm like, you're not selling me on wanting to get in trad hunting, man. So, but yeah, no, he was going through exactly what you're saying. Was the brace height was all messed up on it or something.
Yeah, and so what you want to do is once you get that brace height established that the bow likes, every bow's different. Like if I had one of these guys build me 5 54 at 28 bows identical, every one of them's going to be slightly different.
Really?
Yeah, they're not as consistent as like a compound, okay?
So you have to fiddly fart with it just to find out, just shoot a bunch of arrows and fiddly fart with it?
Yeah.
Really?
And so you're going to have the combination of your knock point, adjusting your knock point, and then your brace height. And so, and they both affect the same thing. So it's kind of it's a challenge. But what I do is once I've got that brace height perfect, I'll take my arrows and knock them, and then I'll put a Sharpie mark on the back of the riser on the arrow. So I can always just look and say, okay, brace height's good. You don't have to measure it. You don't have to be in the field. If you're out hunting and you knock one up and you look and you're like, crap, the Sharpie mark's a 1/4 inch behind the riser. I got to put some twist in the string. Makes sense?
That's really smart. Yeah. I never would have thought of that. I guess I want to get into, and I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to try and blow through some questions here. I have shot trad bows, and I've been pretty accurate when I have. I mean, I've shot really cheap, shitty ones, and I wasn't accurate at all. And then I shot a really good one for the first time, and I was hitting a pop can pretty consistently at 15 yards. Nothing amazing, but I really gravitated towards 3 below the knock, 3 fingers below the knock. Is that pretty standard? Is that normal?
It is. It's I shot a split finger for 15 years. And that's the way I always shot. And then in the last 10 years, I started shooting 3 under. And the reason is that the visual gap between your arrow and your eye, the closer it is, the less calculations you have to do.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
And I know people are going to cringe when they hear this, especially the pure. But the bowyers will say, "Hey, I'm going to tiller your bow for split finger or 3 under." When I've asked for it to be tillered for split finger and then I shoot 3, sometimes it shoots better 3 under. When I've asked for it to be tillered for 3 under, sometimes it shoots better split finger.
Okay.
So you have to tune around all that crap. Okay. There was a time when I was trying to stretch my trad world to 40 yards for elk. Okay. That was the end of the world for me.
40?
And, but I was so accurate at 40 yards, because it was my point on when I was shooting a split finger, setup. Mm-hmm. So when I went to a 3 under, that all changed. But what was funny is that when I started shooting targets at 40, I would go back to split finger and it would be dead on. And so for years, if I had something standing at 40, I would shoot my bow split finger, point on, and zing it. And that's big stuff, elk, moose, that kind of thing. I quit doing that because I'm your brain is not always going to tell you. Like I always try to keep things super simple, and having to change your grip, that was just kind of another thought that I had to go through. And so I just quit doing it and just got used to shooting everything 3-under. I fought the 3-under thing for a while, but what I do like about it is it eliminates the string pinch, the knock pinch.
Yep. Okay.
And I feel like it makes definitely a more consistent shot.
Okay.
That's why I did it more than anything, more than the sight picture, anything else, is I felt like I got a lot of that tail walking high and low that I would get every now and then with a split finger. I think that just kind of went away. But the most important thing, I'm telling you, practice with bare shafts.
Okay, I will
practice with bare shafts. I'm telling you. And then when you put the fletchings on, it's like you can't screw up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like back in a previous life, I used to drive race cars a little bit, and when we would practice, on a track I was very familiar with, the guys would say, "Hey, you're just asleep at the wheel, man. You've been running the same times, constantly. You got to get this car faster. You can't just be happy with what you got." And so they'd go and they'd just dick the car all up. I mean, they would just take all the handling out of it, make it super loose, and make me go out there and fight that damn thing, during practice sessions. And you're literally having to just hyper focus and be perfect just to get it around the track, Then when they would put the car back into shape and set everything back up right, and you go around with that same mindset and you're doing everything just perfect, you're picking up tons of speed because you're practicing in your worst case scenario, figuring out how to get something out of control around a track fast. Same thing with shooting a stick bow with bare shafts. You're shooting the worst case scenario that's just out of control, and it's not going to be very forgiving, and you're just going to have to perfect every shot. Then when you put the fletchings on, you can't even see the knock. You can't even see the arrow fly. It's perfect, and that's how you're going to kill animals, is perfect arrow fly. If you see those feathers wobbling headed down range, you're out. You're gonna have half the arrow hanging out. It just is what it is.
So
if you can see that knock spinning, it's going to zip right through it.
I know this is just going to come from studying, and maybe we have to do a follow-up episode, but I guess I would have to learn all the manipulations I do to the arrow, and then what causes those. What causes the tail left, what causes, whatever. So I've got a pretty big learning curve ahead of me, it sounds like.
Yeah, but, so I will say that with stick bows, the spine is more critical. The spine of a shaft is more critical than on compounds. So you'll be able to see like all the tuning methods that you have extensive experience in. You'll be able to see all those indicators. They're going to be a lot more visual. They're going to be highlighted a lot more with a stick bow. And but you'll know the basics to make those changes and get it shooting good. And then you're going to want to throw feathers on and make yourself look great and shoot all these beautiful groups and, for Instagram, of course. And, but you're not doing yourself any justice by doing that. Because you're fooling yourself, into thinking that you're a good trad bow shot and you've got, good efficient arrow flight.
Interesting. What spine would I need to start with?
It depends on what weight, but
I would do about a 50 to 53 pound. I don't want to go up to 55. I just think that's a little bit. I want to be really comfortable at full draw, so I'm thinking 50.
Probably 400s.
Okay.
If you get one of the better high performance recurves and you shoot 400s, like 50 grains of components and a 175 to 200 grain head, you'll be about in that 550 range. And if you can get that to fly, it's a deadly setup.
And how long are you cutting your arrows? Because you and I have the same specs pretty much, right?
We do. We shoot. We're about the same. I'm a lot tougher than you, but we're about the same size.
I can't grow the facial hair like you do. That's for sure.
Well, I'm a lot older too, so it's mostly white now. But no, so the way I do it is I'll put. So for me, like I'm the reason Day Six makes broadheads is because I wanted to make our XL broadhead for stick bow hunting. That was my holy grail dream broadhead that nobody would make. But I knew I was only going to sell like 12 of them a year to stick bow people, so we needed to make them for compound folks. So, but anyway, so I'll start with a 200 grain point because that's what I want to build my arrow around, is that head.
Okay.
And then I'll start the shaft. There's no reason to start with a full length shaft for me because I know that I can go ahead and take an inch off of it or whatever, and I'm going to be working down from there. But let's just say you start with a full length bare shaft, you got everything glued up, you got your field point on there, and you just start shooting. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to start at the Boyer's recommended brace height. Okay. And you're going to start the knot point a little bit of just, an eighth high center. Okay. And start shooting that way. And then what you're going to do there is just pull your nock and trim the arrow from the back. Because what you're trying to achieve is your first shot. You want that arrow to be slightly weak. So you're going to want it, nock left, planing right. That way you can start trimming from the back and stiffening that shaft. So if you get it down to like 29, 28 inches and it's still not, you're like, crap, that's not going to work. Now I got to go to a 350. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
You do like a half inch at a time? What are you doing?
Well, if you listen to the experts, a half inch at a time, but I can tell you that there's not many stick bow guys out there that can tell the difference in a half inch.
So you go an inch then, probably.
Well, I look at it. I'm sitting there looking at it because I can tell from years of experience if it's so much left, I may cut 2 inches off of it at one time because I can go, oh man, that thing's way out.
Yeah.
And then you can start playing a half inch at a time and tell yourself that you're that good that you can notice it. It's pretty hard. But that's how I do it. And then start firing those bear shafts, man. And you get those babies flying consistent where they're straight in the target, they're grouping. It's once you get that, you're home free when you put a broadhead and fletching on, man. It's just, you just don't see them fly. And like I said at the beginning, man, arrow flight is 99% of getting good penetration with a stick bow.
Yeah.
All that other stuff is just mental masturbation if you want to know the truth about it.
I appreciate that. So, well, I think you and I are both having to get off of here, but God, I've got so much more questions and stuff. We'll probably have to get together again some other time, and I can just do a part 2 of this, and because I'm wanting to talk about shooting off the shelf, having a little red. I want to cover all that stuff. So, if you've got time and in the future,
you can get you a bow and start shooting, and then we can work through your agonies and sorrows.
Well, I was looking at the Hoyt Satori, but I don't know if that's a good bow. I mean, I've shot it and it was cool, but I'm like, I don't know. But
well, it's super consistent. So it's an aluminum riser bow, right?
I think so. Yes, it is. And then it has the wooden limbs or something like that, or laminate limbs.
Yeah, it's not going to be a high performance bow, but you can find one easily. It's probably a really good bow to learn on, and because it's probably going to be a little more forgiving. It's not as aggressive of a limb. That you're going to have center shot with aluminum riser, so that's a given. Mm-hmm. I just can't personally hunt with aluminum riser. I feel like they don't have a soul.
Okay.
I'm completely a hypocrite because my risers are all like composite G10 glass and all this space age crap. But it was actually sanded and formed by hand. You know what I mean? It wasn't.
There's a little TLC
CNC machined. So, it's a total hypocritical thing to say because you got carbon limbs and composite this, and it's a joke. But anyway, I stand high on my hypocritical hill there. But it's probably a really good bow for you to start on. Okay. And you can find them cheap and learn, and then decide what you want as far as a really good, custom rig.
Would you start 45 pounds just so you can build good form and everything, or would you start at 50?
Hell no.
Really?
No. This is one thing I was talking with my buddy Scott Crippen. Scott's my age. He's been my trad bow hunting guy for 30 years. He and I have traveled all over the world together with stick bows, and he's deadly with a stick bow. There's no disadvantage with that guy in a stick bow. And he started building longbows like 6 months ago, just for the hell of it. Built self bows. He's not doing them to sell and stuff. He's just like for fun. But we were just talking about this the other day, because everybody he's been talking to, about bows and all, they're like, yeah, I want a 40 or a 45. And he's like, what in the hell are y'all talking about? Are you going to hunt with this? So, I mean, the trend has gone so far down in weight because everybody's focusing on the 3D shoots and going and shooting targets. And for me, it's, man, how are you going to get through an elk? How are you going to get through a moose? That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking about what my score is going to be on target 25.
Right.
Because I'm too tired. I don't care. I want to know what my score is on 1 through 5. I want those first 5 shots to be deadly with as much poundage as I can shoot.
Okay.
Because you're gonna screw up with a stick bow. You're gonna hit them bad. Man, if you're shooting a 45-pound bow, and listen, I can hear it now. Oh, I've killed this and that with I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. But for me, I want to shoot as much weight as I can.
Yeah.
So if you can't shoot 50 pounds, man,
hit the gym.
Do something. Swing a hammer. Go split some wood. Do something.
Copy.
But yeah, I mean, when I get to the point where I can't shoot 50, when I'm too old and I can't shoot 50 out of a stick bow anymore, I'm shooting a compound.
Okay.
So, and when I get too old to shoot a compound, I'm going to a rifle. I'm not going to a crossbow. I'm skipping over that and going to a rifle.
Good man.
Yeah.
I think everybody has one thing in common. Everybody hates crossbows.
Oh my God. I know. Like, I feel so bad.
Pick a lane.
Anyway,
but
hey, buddy, I enjoyed it again as always.
Yeah.
Go get you a toy and start playing with it. And we'll work through getting your arrow set up right, and then
I'll probably
we'll get back on here and do a recap.
Yeah, I'll be blowing up your phone here once I start having, issues with my bow. So, all right, brother. Hey, I appreciate it, Bryan, as always, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, buddy.
See ya.
Yeah.